God's Word Express.
We all have this deep desire for growth, right? For success, for
Mhm.
blessing. And I think we instinctively believe the formula is just more effort.
Exactly. Hustle more, pray more, just be more consistent. It all comes down to what I am doing.
But the sources we're looking at today really flip that idea on its head. It's a sermon series on bearing fruits, and this part, the fifth one, is all about the gardener.
And it suggests that, yes, your consistency is vital, but it's maybe only half the equation. The real key to hitting your maximum capacity isn't just you. It's about who is tending the garden.
Which totally changes the mission for this deep dive. We're not just talking about self-help. We're unpacking why you might need external appointed guidance to really grow. Okay, let's unpack this.
The source material starts with a really practical, almost physical framework. It ties your capacity for blessing directly to your personal growth.
I love the analogy they use, the one about building muscle. You can't just wish for it. It takes patience, and it absolutely takes consistent targeted exercise that actually challenges you.
Precisely. It doesn't happen overnight. And the spiritual parallel is, well, it's perfect. As your spiritual muscles get stronger, you can handle more weight.
And that weight is the blessing. It's the responsibility.
That's it. The logic is so simple, really. No one gives a huge, heavy box to a small child. They can't handle it. Your capacity right now determines the blessing you can receive.
And you can feel how important this topic is just from the story the speaker told about preparing it, that his entire sermon file just vanished an hour before he was supposed to speak.
Something that hadn't happened in 6 years. It shows there was intense opposition to this specific message getting out.
Yeah, the enemy knows how dangerous it is if we understand our true capacity.
And what's really fascinating is that the opposition isn't just about stopping the fruit later on. It's about stopping the seed from ever getting planted in the first place.
Right, so let's talk about that. The blockades to actually being fruitful. The biggest one seems to be this idea of surrender.
It is. The source says the enemy works overtime to keep the seed out of the soil, because he knows once that seed of obedience is planted, its growth can't be stopped. All he can do then is make the waiting period uncomfortable.
And the interference can be so direct. There was that really vivid story the speaker shared.
The one about casting out a demon?
Yeah, and the demon says, point blank, "We will not let you have another daughter." And the reason was so specific.
Because she would become another servant of God.
Hmm.
It's targeted warfare, aimed at limiting future spiritual capacity, future multiplication.
It's all about capacity. But the message brings it back to us, to our own actions. It forces us to ask, what is true surrender?
Because a lot of what we do, going to church, tithing, it can become comfortable, routine. The source makes a really challenging point. If it doesn't cause you stress, it might not be true surrender.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because we mix up being comfortable with being obedient.
We do.
True surrender is defined here as obeying God or an appointed authority in a moment that causes you genuine, deep stress.
That stress is the sign. It's the indicator that you're planting a real seed, not just going through the motions. The example they gave. Say you have 3,000 saved, and you feel the prompt to give away 2,000.
No, that's stressful.
That is physically stressful. Or you're in an argument, you're ready to fight back, and you choose to obey that check in your spirit and just surrender.
That moment, that costly, stressful moment of obedience, that's the seed that guarantees a future harvest. The stress proves the cost.
And the cost guarantees the value. The high-stakes example that was shared really drives this home.
And the speaker and his wife were facing all that criticism.
Just widespread public criticism, and he said, I'm a fighter. I collected all the evidence. He was ready to go to war.
But his wife said we must not retaliate. And the act of surrender wasn't just holding back. It was actually deleting all that evidence he had collected.
Deleting his justification.
Yeah.
His control. That's not about feeling good. It's about choosing obedience over your own sense of justice. It costs you everything. And that's the ground where transformation happens.
Okay, so let's pivot now to the main event. The absolute necessity of this appointed gardener.
Right. The source makes this powerful argument that even with all your own effort, all your personal surrender, you will bear more fruit if you submit to someone appointed to care for you.
This goes right back to Scripture, doesn't it?
It does. Isaiah 5.7. Israel is the Lord's vineyard. And a vineyard isn't a wild forest. It needs constant, skilled, intimate care. We're not designed to grow in isolation.
And the fig tree parable in Luke just lays this out so clearly. The owner comes looking for fruit for 3 years, finds nothing, and says, cut it down.
Why is it using up the ground? Fruitlessness is seen as a waste of resources.
But then the caretaker, the gardener, steps in, he intercedes. He says, give me one more year. And he's very specific about what he'll do.
Yes, he says, I will dig around it and fertilize it. Now, here's the detail that is so crucial.
Right, because a fig tree is normally a wild tree. It doesn't need much care.
Exactly. So the very fact that this tree was in the vineyard meant it was already getting general care, it was in a good environment, and yet
It still wasn't producing. It needed that specialized, appointed intervention. The digging, the fertilizing.
that's the key. It's not that you're totally neglected on your own. It's that to go from just existing to maximum fruitfulness, you need that appointed care. The Bible is clear. God appoints people to be caretakers. If you want to bear the most fruit, you have to be under their care.
So what does that look like in practice? What's the human mechanism for this?
Well, 1 Corinthians 3 gives us the perfect model. Paul planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase.
So God is the source of the growth, but he uses people for the actual work.
Absolutely. He uses appointed workers, like a Paul or an Apollos, for the specific necessary jobs of planting and watering. And, as we'll see, pruning.
This really pushes back against the idea of, being a lone wolf Christian, just attending church but not really being connected or accountable to anyone.
It does. The sources are clear on this. Doing that, you might grow a little,
Yeah.
but you will always produce less fruit than you're capable of.
Because being under care means you're going to get pruned. And nobody enjoys pruning.
Because it means cutting things off. Things that even look alive, but are actually just draining the plant's resources.
The anecdotes shared in the source material about this were so raw.
They were. They show the kind of difficult confrontation that only a real caretaker would risk.
Like warning an MC about their personality, which he described as being hit with a 2x4. I mean, that's harsh.
It's harsh, but it was necessary. Or telling a very dedicated leader to stop rushing to be first in line to eat. Or just looking at someone who's constantly talking and disrupting things and saying, stop talking.
That's incredibly risky for a leader. And it raises that question, right? When is it pruning and when is it just control or abuse? How do you know?
It's a test of discernment, for sure. But the source points back to the appointment. God chooses the shepherd. And the goal is always the fruitfulness of the plant, not the gardener's ego.
They use that analogy of cutting a tiger's fang.
Or putting your head into a crocodile's mouth. The caretaker takes a huge risk to remove behavior that is self-destructive for the person they're caring for.
That context is everything.
Yeah.
And it makes the comparison between the sheep and the goats so powerful.
It really is the perfect illustration. A sheep is basically helpless against pests. The shepherd has to apply the oil to protect it.
But a goat.
A goat, when it's bothered by those same pests and it has no shepherd, it does the only thing it can think of. It runs headfirst into a fire to try and solve the problem.
Which is just massive self-inflicted harm.
Exactly. A lack of guidance, a lack of that shepherd's care leads us down these terribly destructive paths when we try to deal with our own problems.
Okay, so if we need this caretaker, who chooses them? It's not us, is it?
No. And the sources are very clear on this, pulling from Jeremiah. God appoints a shepherd according to his heart, not the sheep's preference.
Which is tough, because we might not always like the shepherd God chooses for us.
We might not.
Yeah.
But submitting to that appointed leader is what leads to thriving and multiplication. And this connects right to the foundational role of certain leaders, like the apostles.
Their main job is to lay the foundation.
That's it. Paul talks about it in Romans. He says, he made it his aim to preach where Christ wasn't known, so he wouldn't be building on someone else's foundation.
And that foundation is just, it's everything. I love the analogy of the 40-year-old house.
The one with no cracks.
Yeah, no cracks at all after 40 years. Why? Because the builder spent the time and money to lay an incredibly strong foundation at the very beginning. You can't see it, but it's holding up the entire structure.
And the opposite is also true. If you start with a bad foundation, a church full of politics, a view of the pastor as just an employee, a non-spirit-led environment, that's going to affect your growth forever.
Those initial flaws, they stick with you. They limit your capacity down the road.
It's why Ephesians 4 gives us that whole list. Apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers, they're all appointed for a specific two-part purpose.
To equip the saints for the work of ministry.
Right, for diaconia, service, and to edify or build up the body. And that word oikodome, it means to construct a strong building. Their job is to make the people stronger so they can do the work.
And what's so reassuring is that the reward is the same. The person preaching and the person setting up the chairs get the same reward as long as the foundation is right.
Exactly. But there's a final warning in there too. Great appointment, great responsibility, also brings great criticism. You have to be ready for it.
It's the price the gardener pays for taking the risk.
For putting his head in the crocodile's mouth to help the fruit grow.
So, after all this, what does it really mean for you, the person listening? We've sort of distilled this deep dive down to two core principles for bearing the most fruit.
Right. First, you have to have that personal consistency and a real willingness to surrender, especially when it's stressful and it costs you something.
And second, and this is the hard part, the absolute necessity of submitting to the specialized, sometimes really intense, care and pruning of an appointed gardener.
And that leaves us with a final provocative thought. If you feel like you're stuck, if you feel stagnant, you have to ask yourself, am I avoiding being placed under the care of someone God has appointed for me?
Are you trying to be a self-managing goat running toward your own fire instead of a guided sheep letting the shepherd protect you?
Really think about it. What are the dangerous fangs in your life that you need the gardener to remove?
We hope this deep dive into the source material has given you a much clearer, if maybe a little more challenging path toward your maximum growth and capacity.
Today, we say goodbye.
Ah.